Point traders, how we doing? Algo fam, what's going on? Thanks for joining me for the show. Looking at Algorand ALGO on that ticker. I want to start off with a tweet that I made or a post over on X at coin_trades is the handle. Make sure to drop me a follow too. But a couple days ago, posted how the Algo 4-hour chart is the most relevant right now, and it still is. And we want to talk about why. So specifically, one of the things we look at when we talk about technical analysis and indicators relating to technical analysis is using indicators that work. It sounds simple, but what I really mean by this is indicators that are actually proving effective multiple times and continuing to be. So for example, if we actually drop down to the 2-hour chart, you can see how in this, for example, we're actually seeing the price dip below the exponential moving averages. So we don't really have as good of a trend and a guide for that support level as we do, for example, when we flip over to the 4. So for example, when we do drop down to the 1, still same sort of thing, maintain a little bit of an uptrend, but more or less it's not as nice and pretty as what we are seeing out of the 4-hour. So for example, I can even turn off the 12-period EMA right now and just look specifically at the 26 and the 50-period EMAs. So every time we do have a nice rally, consolidation does pull back and we do find support in between the 26 and the 50. Same sort of thing, rallying up, pulling back, finding support along the 26, pulling back in between the 26 and 50. Nice rally, pulling back, support in between the 26 and 50. So you get the picture, and right now we are looking at a pullback where we're actually extremely close to potentially breaking below. But if we go ahead and zoom in on this current 4-hour right now, you can see how we are actually seeing the bulls defend a very nice close on top of the 50-period EMA. And as such, we're still thinking that this is a relevant indication and setup. So this is really what we mean by using indicators that work, because until it invalidates, we're actually going to think and continue to use this as a very nice upside. So that does mean that we actually have to find what happens in order to invalidate it and how that would actually change our strategy. So right now, if we do see a break, because this has been so effective as support on the way up, if we do see a break, that's probably going to be a pretty big signal that we are going to start to lose the trend, at least on the 4-hour time frame. And then we will have to zoom out, for example, next onto the 12 and figure out where we're going to find our supports from there. And typically in that instance, we keep zooming out, looking how it actually plays off on the larger trend and what actually needs to happen on the longer trend. So for example, on the daily, we're looking at a very nice parabolic move, huge upside wick, so it actually does have us pulling back. But because we start so far above the 12-period EMA, and we actually haven't had a back test of this 12-period EMA since pretty much right off the move about the middle of November. So ever since, just seen prices explode on top of this 12-period EMA. And so that's why we think that at some point we're gonna need to see a back test and a retracement. So could ultimately end up seeing that at some case. So we do need to see that play out here, because that is coming in the future on this chart. Now, with that said, looking at the 4-hour, still looking to actually maintain this. One of the things we're looking at here on this 4-hour, though, is how we're actually starting to get a little bit of a bearish cross on the 12 below the 26-period EMA on this 4-hour. So that's going to be one of the first bearish signs that we see. So even if we can actually maintain support on top of this 50, need to see that reverse and actually maintain a bullish uptrend with the 12 back on top of the 26 and heading back to the upside. So it is kind of a little bit more critical right now for the bulls to be able to defend the 50-period EMA and actually push prices back up, allowing the exponential moving averages on this 4-hour time frame to stay in a bullish formation like they have been this whole time. So several times tests and attempts of these levels have seen the 12 get very close to the 26, but ultimately prices did get pushed back up and maintain a full bullish setup where the 12 is sitting on top of the 26 and the 26 sitting on top of the 50. From a retracement standpoint, though, we're still looking at a very normal and decent size retracement. So even coming in from the trend high right now at about 61.5 cents, about 61.34, down to current levels, about 25% of a pullback. So very normal for crypto, and even looking at a Fibonacci, for example, from the last time we found support in between the 26 and 50, right around 25.86, all the way up to the top. We're looking at a retracement that does come back, sitting with prices kicking off this 50-period retracement for Fibonacci's at 43.60. So very good level. We would have loved to have held 38.2 at 47.78, but all is good and well in the 50% retracement, still a very normal line, especially as we do continue to maintain support on a relevant indicator like ones that we found support at previously on this whole trend to the upside. Now, like we talk about too, every single time we do see an upside move, we do get to that next stage of the next parabolic move. So we have gone parabolic, ultimately consolidate. That does shape up for the next parabolic move. And right now we are looking at same sort of thing. At some point though, we do have to retrace and actually start to change the trend to the downside on the shorter term. And we know that that does mean that at some point on this daily, pulling back and actually setting that higher low, because we can't just go up and up and up and up and up indefinitely without actually retracing and setting that higher low to prove and confirm and carry on the longer term uptrend. Now, if we do want to look at daily volume, just talk about how insanely bullish we have seen. Very nice progression and increasing bullish volume here for Algorand, and especially over the last 2 days of pullback. A little bit more minimal of volume here, so we are actually going to expect a little bit more of a tapered off pullback, especially with Bitcoin hitting all-time highs above 100,000. But yeah, overall, still looking like a very nice setup, and knowing that this longer-term chart does have a little bit of cooldown, so that's kind of why looking at the shorter-term charts is so important and critical. Now, got it zoomed out on the daily time frame. I want to talk about current price level supports to the downside right now. We're pretty much sitting close to being on top of one at about 45 cents. Next level below that, big point of support is going to be coming in at about 40.24 that is. And then below that, we do have a very strong level of resistance as well. That's going to come in at 33.67. So overall, we're still looking very good, even zooming in on these levels and comparing it to where we were actually in the past on the cycle on the way down. So since we're actually so far extended above where the previous trend highs were, we do have that very nice opportunity to see plenty of supports on the downside, even despite the fact that we kind of just blew through all those levels and didn't really get stuck up anything as resistance again. But the fact that it was resistance previously, and now how we actually did get so much nice bullish volume, pretty much is that sign that we didn't have to get stopped up at a lot of those levels, because all this volume just allowed the bulls to just power through these levels. So now we know that we have plenty of big zones to the downside where we're actually going to see support coming in. And especially with these exponential moving averages rolling up, we're going to be in a very good shape to actually consolidate or continue an uptrend in the short-term future. Now, flipping over into the weekly, one of the great things right now is that we're looking at the weekly exponential moving averages in a full bullish setup with 12, 26, and 50 on the bottom. As you can see, off the move in the spring, we actually never got that full level, so we weren't completely flipping in that bullish setup. So we were getting close, but ultimately, once we lost support from these exponential moving averages, reclaimed them as resistance once again, pushing prices to the downside before finally finding lower prices and longer term support just below the 11-cent mark. So this is pretty significant because the last time we actually had a bullish setup was coming off of the bull cycle. And as you can see, if we go ahead and zoom in on the last one, this is pretty much the same sort of setup where we were actually seeing plenty of resistance on this downside. Finally saw a nice bullish break and a bullish setup of the exponential moving averages, which did push prices up pretty big in that instance. So once we got our full bullish flip to the effective trend highs, we were looking at about 500%, about a 6x gain. So from where we're looking at currently from the EMAs, if we want to talk about some speculative price growth from the actual EMAs to an upside move, potentially would have prices sitting right around the $1.25 level. I think probably realistically up to about 130, which is the heart line from the previous move back in the early part of 2021 and into the spring. And not to say that that's going to be where we end up seeing a topping out of, but that's a very good opportunity for Algorand to hit that type of potential looking at. But realistically, being able to maintain the same amount of bullish growth and volume here like we've seen so far is going to be the next key in catalyst to actually top out these trend highs and put Algorand in an all-time high zone. Don't want to get too speculative right now since we're mostly talking about short-term charts, but anyway, just pointing out that the longer term looking very good, and we do still have a long time of nice bullish upside ahead just based off of how long it's been and where we were the last time we have seen a lot of these signals. But yeah, so for right now, still very much looking at the 4-hour chart as being relevant. So especially if we can hold support here just below the 45-cent line at 44.57, that's going to be the ultimate key and very critical component, especially if we get over this resistance line at about 47.19. Would definitely love to hear everyone's thoughts and predictions about what happens next with this trend and where we actually see the price move on to next. So make sure to drop a note in the comments sections below. Always love hearing your questions, comments, issues, disagreements, predictions, all that fun stuff. And as always, make sure to go drop me a follow over here on Twitter or X at coin_trades is the handle. Looking forward to chatting with everyone over there. But yeah, that's going to do it for now, though. So stay safe, take care, and I will catch you back in the next video.